I used to think a man's silence was a rejection letter written in invisible ink. You couldn't see the words, but you could feel them, pressed heavy against your chest. I'd stare at my phone like it was an oracle, refreshing the screen as if the right text might materialize and make sense of the ache. But here's what I eventually learned: silence is not always absence. Sometimes it's a mirror, quietly reflecting everything you believe about yourself when no one's watching. And that's the part we're afraid to face, not his quiet, but our own. In America, we're taught to read constant pings and good morning texts as proof of love. So when the messages stop, panic sets in. But what if his silence isn't a verdict? What if it's a stage and you are the one who decides what happens next? Stay with me, because what comes next might just change how you see him and yourself. From the time we're little girls in America, we're told love has a soundtrack and a schedule. Hollywood taught us it's the late night phone calls, the handwritten notes tucked into lockers, the good morning beautiful text before you even open your eyes. Songs told us that if he loves you, he can't stop thinking about you. And if he can't stop thinking about you, he's going to tell you over and over again. That conditioning runs deep. So when the message is slow, it doesn't just feel inconvenient. It feels like proof that something is broken, like a candle quietly snuffed out in a room you didn't realize had gone dark. I remember scrolling through my feed and seeing couples post their constant banter, selfies with captions like, "He never misses a day." It didn't matter if my relationship was steady. Those images made me second guess. They whispered, "If he's not in your inbox, is he still in your heart?" But here's the part we rarely question. What if those rules were wrong from the start? What if we were trained to measure love with the wrong ruler, one that ignores presence without performance, connection without constant noise? Because here's the truth: silence doesn't always signal distance. Sometimes it's just space. And space, when you know how to hold it, can be the most loving thing of all. You know that moment when you see the little typing dots appear on your phone screen and then disappear? Your stomach drops. Your mind starts working faster than your heart can keep up. What was he about to say? Why didn't he send it? It's absurd how much weight we put on three blinking dots, or on the lack of them. I've seen women go from confident to restless in under an hour simply because the reply never came. I've been that woman. Crafting a casual follow-up that took 30 minutes to make sound effortless, staring at the message, wondering if I should hit send, telling myself it's just checking in when deep down I know it's me chasing. This is where the silent tug-of-war begins. Because here's a truth I had to learn the hard way. Sometimes a man's silence isn't a wall, it's a mirror, and what you see in it is entirely yours. For many of us, this is where the old conditioning takes over. We read silence as danger, absence as rejection. Our nervous system flares up like it's been wired to treat a missed text like an alarm bell. That's why some men, consciously or not, pull back. They want to see if your center holds or if you'll crumble and lean in. Now, not every man is calculating in this way, but human nature loves feedback loops. If pulling away makes you run after him, the pattern becomes self-reinforcing. You don't even need to tell him what's happening. He can feel it. And once the dynamic is set, it's hard to undo. Think about it. Every "just wondering if you're okay" text you send after days of silence, like every detailed explanation for why you didn't reach out, every little justification is a signal. And the signal says, your attention controls my energy. That's the moment you've already lost ground. Not because you reached out, but because you shifted from a place of self-trust to a place of self-doubt. The real conflict isn't between you and him. It's between the version of you that waits for someone else to set the tempo and the version of you that sets her own. One is reactive, bracing for a beat that may never drop. The other dances to music she controls. When you're stuck in that waiting game, your life starts to revolve around the potential of a notification. And the tragic irony is, while you're waiting for him to reappear, you've disappeared from your own life. I once had a client, a brilliant entrepreneur who could pitch investors without blinking, but would unravel after a weekend without hearing from the man she was dating. She didn't see it, but she was living in a constant low-level audition for his attention. Her business was thriving, yet her sense of worth was on pause, waiting for his text to hit play. If any part of you recognizes this pattern, here's the pivot point. You can't control the rhythm of someone else's communication, but you can control how much of your life you give to filling in their silence. The tension you feel, that's the space between your longing for connection and your fear of losing it. And it's in that exact space where your power either drains or grows. When a man goes quiet, you stand at a crossroads. One road leads to chasing, overthinking, proving. The other leads to centering, redirecting, building. Both roads hurt at first, let's be honest, but only one keeps your dignity intact. And here's the subtle, dangerous thing about the first road. The more you walk it, the more it feels like the only option. You start believing that your worth is negotiated in someone else's silence. You forget that silence can be a neutral canvas, not a condemnation. I'm not here to tell you never to text first, never to close the gap. I'm here to tell you that the place you text from, fear or fullness, changes everything. One comes from needing validation to feel steady. The other comes from already being steady and simply wanting connection. So the question isn't, should I reach out? The question is, what energy am I standing in when I do? Because the second you start negotiating your self-worth through his responses, you've entered a game where you'll never set the rules. And that's not love, it's emotional gambling, and the house always wins. The rising tension here isn't just about him pulling away. It's about you noticing that part of yourself that gets smaller when he does. It's about catching her in the act, taking her by the hand and leading her back to the center before she disappears completely. And when you do that, when you stand in that center, you start to realize something life-changing. Silence only has the power you give it. There comes a moment when the silence stretches so far you can feel it in your bones. It's like standing on the edge of a canyon. Your voice echoes back, but his never does. That's the point where most women I've met either break or break free. Here's the paradox that changed everything for me. His silence can either be the cage that holds you or the doorway that frees you, depending on what you decide to build inside it. I used to believe that if I could just decode the silence, I'd win the game. Was he upset? Testing me? Losing interest? I thought finding the answer would save me. But silence isn't a puzzle to solve. It's an invitation to notice what kind of life you have without the noise. This is where the real breakthrough happens. You stop pacing by the phone and start pacing yourself. You redirect your energy from speculation to creation. You stop thinking, what's wrong with me? And start asking, what do I want to do with my day? And let me tell you something that will feel like a slap and a blessing at the same time. Sometimes his silence is pure disinterest. No mystery, no hidden test, just a man showing you he's not going to invest. Painful? Yes. Liberating? Yeah, even more so. Because once you accept it, you can stop fighting for a seat at a table where your presence isn't valued. American culture loves the try harder narrative. Work harder, prove yourself, outlast the competition. But in love, trying harder in the wrong direction doesn't lead to victory. It leads to exhaustion. This is why I say your center isn't built when he's pouring attention into you. It's forged in the quiet, when you decide who you are without his applause. Picture it like this. You're on your own trail run. He's on his. If he veers off into the woods, you don't stop and wait for him at mile 3. You keep running. If he comes back and meets you at mile 8, great, you'll have more stories to share. And if he never does, you'll still have finished your run. This is the essence of personal sovereignty, being the author of your day, your energy, your joy. And here's the unexpected twist. When you fully step into that sovereignty, men feel it. Not in a game-playing way, but in the magnetic pull of a woman who is complete without them. It shifts the dynamic instantly. You're no longer the woman waiting to be chosen. You are the woman deciding what and who fits into the life you've chosen for yourself. I saw this in a friend of mine, Maya. She was dating a man who was charismatic, charming, and maddeningly inconsistent. She used to spend entire weekends wondering why he hadn't texted. One Friday, she decided to book a last-minute hiking trip instead of waiting for him to maybe make plans. That weekend changed her life. Not because he suddenly started texting, he didn't, but because she realized how alive she felt when she wasn't holding her breath for someone else's attention. That trip became her blueprint. Choose action over waiting. Choose creation over speculation. And here's the deeper Jungian truth under all of this. His silence is a projection screen for your own shadow. It shows you where you've tied your identity to someone else's behavior. It's uncomfortable to see, but once you do, you can't unsee it. And from that moment forward, every silence becomes a chance to reclaim that part of yourself. When I finally stopped auditioning for silence, I wrote myself a simple code. Not a list of rules to police him, rules to anchor me. My code had 3 lines. 1, I do not argue with absence. 2, I do not chase what steps back. 3, I respond from center, or I do not respond at all. That code changed the temperature of my life. Because once you stop wrestling with what isn't in the room, you have energy again for your work, your friends, your own becoming. It's astonishing how much space returns when you stop composing essays to the void. Here's what that looks like in the wild: the ping ritual. When the urge to just check in hits, I set a timer for 10 minutes and put the phone in a drawer. 10 minutes to walk outside, water the plants, breathe. If the urge remains after those 10, I ask, what would I want to say if I already felt secure? If I can't answer that honestly, I don't text. Security first, message second. The boundary reply. If he resurfaces with a casual hey after going quiet, I answer with warm clarity. Good to hear from you. I do best with consistent communication. Are you open to that? No edge, no ice, just truth. A boundary is a door, not a wall. The exit grace. If the silence stretches into indifference, I let it name itself. Looks like we're in different rhythms. I'm gonna step back, wishing you well. That sentence saved me months of decoding. Closure doesn't always arrive. Sometimes you bless it into being. Notice what's missing? Punishment, scolding, strategic delay. I'm not auditioning for a role in his movie. I'm directing mine. A Jungian mentor once told me, what you fight owns you, what you face frees you. Male silence owned me when I fought it. Refresh, overthink. It lost power the day I faced what it stirred in me. A fear of being ordinary, a fear of being left, a fear that love might not choose me unless I jumped higher than the next woman. That was my shadow speaking, not his soul, not fate, my unexamined story. When you meet your shadow, you stop projecting it onto his quiet. You stop reading every pause as proof. Instead, you start treating each pause as information. That's the pivot from panic to discernment. Information A, he's in a busy season and his style is sparse. Information B, he's ambivalent and keeps you as an option. Information C, he lacks the skill or the will to relate consistently. Not all information is equal, but all of it helps you choose. The goal isn't to decode men, it's to decide you. Decide the rhythm you thrive in. Decide the standard you keep. Decide the kind of life that stays vivid with or without a reply. Think of yourself as a lighthouse, not a search party. A lighthouse doesn't sprint across the ocean to rescue passing ships. It stands lit and visible, so those who can navigate by light will find their way. The rest drift on, not your storm to fix, not your boat to steer. And here's the paradox that makes you magnetic without playing games. The moment you stop pleading with the weather starts revealing itself. A man who's emotionally available tends to step toward light. He doesn't need you to shrink, dim, or spark fireworks on command. He just needs to see you steady. The inconsistent ones, they circle, then fade. Your steadiness sorts them for you. Let's get painfully practical. If he disappears for days, you don't fill the gap with performance, you fill it with life. Dinner with a friend, a long run, a chapter written. If he returns with sweetness but no commitment, you listen for pattern, not promises. Pattern is the curriculum. Words are the brochure. If he asks for understanding but not improvement, believe him the first time. Compassion doesn't require self-erasure. And if, in the middle of all this, you hear the old script whisper, maybe if you were more fun, more quiet, more available, that's the shadow again, selling you a smaller self. Thank it for trying to keep you safe. Then decline the offer. The safer you try to be by shrinking, the more unsafe you become to yourself. I learned to make one clean move instead of 100 tangled ones. Name the dynamic, name my need, name my choice. 3 lines again. You tend to go quiet for long stretches, reality named. I do best with steady contact, even short check-ins, need named. If that's not your style, I'm going to step back, choice named. No drama, no defense, just daylight. If we're compatible, that clarity deepens intimacy. If we're not, that clarity returns my time. And yes, sometimes his silence is kindness. He knows he can't meet you where you are, and instead of stringing you along, he lets the space speak. Respect that. Closure delivered without cruelty is still closure. Honor the message, even when it arrives without words. But sometimes silence is convenience. Your warm company when he wants it, low maintenance when he doesn't. He isn't evil, he's uncommitted. The cure isn't a speech, the cure is a standard. The moment your standard becomes non-negotiable, convenience loses access. Let me hand you a simple inner test I use when the conversation slows. Does my life remain vivid? If the answer is yes, if your days still taste like your days, then his rhythm might simply be different and you can evaluate from calm. But if your color drains, your world narrows to a notification, then the issue isn't his silence. The issue is that you've muted yourself to hear him better. Turn your own volume back up, because the deeper truth of this climax is not about him at all. It's about the dignity of your attention. Where you place it becomes your life. If you place it on the door he might walk through, you live in a hallway. If you place it on the room you're building, you live in a home. So build the room. Furnish it with friendships that text back and show up, with work that stretches you, with rituals that return you to yourself, morning pages, sunset walks, music you haven't danced to in years. When he returns, and yes, they often do, he will not find a woman counting tiles in the hallway. He'll find a woman hosting a life. He'll have to knock. By now, the canyon should feel different. It hasn't shrunk. You've grown. The echo is still an echo, but it no longer sounds like judgment. It sounds like choice. And once you feel that, once you know you can bless a silence and still bless your day, you're ready for the cleanest truth of all. Sometimes the most loving sentence you can say to yourself is, "This isn't my person." Not bitter, not bruised, just honest. The right story opens when the wrong story ends. Take a breath with me. Put a hand on your heart. Say it out loud if you want to. I do not argue with absence. I do not chase what steps back. I respond from center, or I do not respond at all. That is not indifference. That is intimacy with yourself. And the woman who lives from that intimacy is unforgettable. Now, if you're ready, I'll show you how to translate this dignity into daily habits. So your center isn't a mood, it's a muscle. There's one more layer to this that most women miss, and it's the one that cements the shift. Silence will always exist in relationships, even the healthiest ones. Partners get absorbed in their work, their families, their own inner weather. You can't train the silence out of love. What you can do is train yourself to inhabit it differently. When you start living that way, you begin to notice three distinct kinds of quiet. One, the functional quiet. He's busy, you're busy. No tension, no hidden message. The space between is neutral. Two, the reflective quiet. He's processing something, and instead of filling the air, he's holding it. In healthy connections, this quiet often leads to deeper conversation later. Three, the withdrawing quiet. He's disengaging, whether consciously or unconsciously. This is the silence that exposes compatibility gaps. The old version of me lumped all three into one category: danger. My nervous system treated them the same: panic first, then react. But when you start distinguishing them, you replace panic with perception. And perception is the birthplace of power. Think of it like learning to read weather patterns. A light drizzle doesn't mean a hurricane is coming, but a sudden drop in pressure, that's when you decide whether to seek shelter or keep sailing. Jung taught that until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. That's what this stage of the journey is about. Dragging your unconscious responses into the daylight so they stop steering you towards self-abandonment. Here's the most radical thing you can do in the face of silence. Stay fully in your own life. Not as a performance to get him back, but because your life is where your value grows. You don't become magnetic by proving you can outweight anyone. You become magnetic by creating a gravitational field of your own. I watched my client Marissa embody this. Her boyfriend, a startup founder, would vanish into 10-hour workdays without warning. She used to spiral, scrolling, texting friends for interpretation, losing hours to mental autopsies of their last interaction. Then she shifted. The next time it happened, she finished her day at work, grabbed her camera, and spent the evening photographing the golden light over the harbor. She sent him exactly one picture, not with a question mark, not with a wish you were here, just caught this tonight, thought you'd like it. That one photo carried more dignity than 100 anxious check-ins. It wasn't bait, it was her world, still turning. He responded within an hour, not because of a trick, but because he could feel she hadn't collapsed in his absence. The deeper truth here? The women who keep living richly during silence become irreplaceable, not because they're hard to get, but because they're hard to shake. When you stop letting silence dictate your worth, the entire energy of the relationship changes. You're no longer in the role of the good student waiting for approval. You're a peer, two complete people choosing day by day to meet in the middle. And here's the bittersweet part. Sometimes when you master this, the relationship still ends. Not because you did something wrong, but because the silence revealed a mismatch that clarity could no longer ignore. That's when your new center becomes the bridge to your next chapter. You don't collapse. You don't rewrite your personality. You don't wonder if you should have been less much. You walk forward, still lit, still anchored. By now, if you've followed me through this climb, you can feel it. The shift from seeing silence as an indictment to seeing it as a filter. The filter doesn't just sort men, it sorts you. It shows you when you're in self-respect and when you're slipping into self-erasure. And that awareness, that's the summit. That's the place where his voice matters, but it doesn't make or break your day. That's where you can meet love without losing yourself in it. So the next time the quiet stretches out, remember, not all silences are created equal. Some are harmless, some are healing, and some are telling you to choose differently. Your work is to know which is which and to act from the woman who refuses to disappear. Because when you master that, you're not just surviving the quiet, you're shaping your life in the middle of it. And that's when the view from the summit is worth every step you took to get here. Now, let's bring all of this down from the mountain and into your daily rhythm, where self-possession stops being a moment and starts being your default. When you finally reach the point where silence no longer robs you of your breath, something shifts deep inside. You realize you have been training for this all along. Not training to outlast him, but training to outlast the version of yourself who needed him to define her day. This is where we translate awareness into rhythm. Because knowing you should stay centered is easy to agree with on paper. Living it on Tuesday at 9:42 p.m. when the phone stays dark, that's the real work. I've seen too many women have the revelation, feel the power for a week, and then slide back into the pull of old patterns. Why? Because they never built the muscle to hold the new standard. That's why I'm giving you a 4-step daily practice. Simple, repeatable, and anchored in reality. This isn't about becoming hard or untouchable. It's about becoming so deeply rooted in yourself that no one else's pause can uproot you. Step 1, pause before you fill the gap. Every time you feel the itch to reach out just to soothe the discomfort, stop, breathe. Put your hand on your chest and name exactly what you're feeling: lonely, anxious, rejected, impatient. By naming it, you pull it out of the shadows and into your conscious mind. Jung said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. This is how you interrupt fate. Step 2, pivot your focus. Once you've named the feeling, redirect it. This isn't about distraction, it's about deliberate redirection. Choose one meaningful action that belongs to your world. Send a voice note to a friend, work on a project, go for a run, start that online course you've been putting off. Every pivot is a vote for your own life. Step 3, pursue yourself. Set one daily goal that has nothing to do with him or the relationship. It can be as small as finishing a chapter of a book or as big as applying for a new role. The point is to remember you have a future that doesn't hinge on his replies. Step 4, protect your peace. Set limits for how much mental real estate you give to decoding his behavior. If you catch yourself running mental simulations for more than 10 minutes, stop. Picture a do not disturb sign on the door of your mind. You decide who gets in. The beauty of this cycle, pause, pivot, pursue, protect, is that it works whether the silence lasts hours, days, or indefinitely. It's not about punishing him, it's about preserving you. Let me give you an example. My client Danielle had a habit of spiraling every time her boyfriend went more than a few hours without texting. When she started this practice, she caught herself mid-scroll one Saturday, paused, and realized she was feeling insecure. Not because of anything he had done, but because she'd tied her self-worth to how often he reached out. She pivoted by grabbing her guitar and learning a new song. She pursued herself by signing up for an open mic night. And she protected her peace by deciding not to reread their last conversation 20 times. By the time he texted her the next morning, she was already in motion. Her life hadn't been on pause. That energy difference was obvious, not just to him, but to her. And here's the secret no one tells you. When you stop making someone else's attention the thermostat for your emotions, you become wildly more attractive. Not because you're playing hard to get, but because you're no longer broadcasting need. Need repels, fullness draws in. But even more important than attraction is freedom. Freedom from the hallway life, standing still, waiting for a door to open. Freedom from the constant self-audit of, did I say the right thing? Did I wait long enough? Was I too much? Freedom to decide that your value was never on trial in the first place. I want you to imagine your life as a house. Every room is a part of you. Your creativity, your friendships, your work, your play. When you give all your energy to waiting by the front door, the rest of the house grows dusty. But when you live in the whole house, when you cook in the kitchen, dance in the living room, read in the study, your life stays alive, whether or not anyone knocks. This is what men feel when they meet a woman who is centered. They walk in and see a life already lit from within. They can add to it, but they can't power it. That's the difference between being a partner and being a power source. So here's my challenge for you. The next time silence shows up, don't race to break it. Let it breathe. Use it as your cue to light up another room in your house and watch how quickly your sense of power stops depending on who's at the door. Because the truth is, the love you're capable of giving to yourself and to another only gets richer when it's not laced with fear of absence. The more you practice this, the more you realize a good relationship isn't built on constant noise. It's built on the ability to stay whole in the quiet. There's a moment after you've practiced holding your center through enough silences when you stop thinking about how to respond and start thinking about how to live. That's when you know the muscle has formed. Because at the beginning, it feels like effort, like you're constantly catching yourself before you slip into the old patterns, but over time it becomes instinct. You open your eyes in the morning and your first thought isn't, did he text? It's, what do I want today to feel like? That shift is priceless. Rewriting the story you tell yourself. We've been sold a certain romance myth, the one where love is proven by constant attention and the absence of it is always a warning sign. That story makes for good TV, but it's lousy for real life. In reality, the healthiest love often has stretches of quiet. It's not about the frequency of contact, it's about the quality when it happens. So you get to decide, do you keep reciting the old myth every time your phone stays quiet, or do you write a new one? In your new story, silence doesn't mean abandonment, it means space. And in that space, you grow, setting standards without building walls. One of the biggest misconceptions about standing in your center is that it means being cold, unavailable, or hard to reach. That's not what this is about. You can still be warm, still be open, still be responsive. The difference is you're no longer dependent on their engagement to feel whole. Think of like owning a beautiful garden. You welcome visitors, you even give tours, but you don't hand over the watering can and hope they keep it alive. You tend to it daily because it's yours. And if someone wants to enjoy the garden, they're stepping into a place that's already thriving. The 3 daily checks. To keep that garden alive, I teach women 3 simple check-ins. 3 questions you ask yourself before you respond to silence or decide to reach out. 1, am I speaking from fullness or from fear? If the answer is fear, pause. No text, no call, no accidental meme share until you've grounded yourself. 2, will this action add to my life even if he doesn't respond? If the answer is yes, send it. If not, save it. 3, does this align with the woman I'm becoming? If it doesn't, you've got your answer. This practice keeps you from betraying your future self for the comfort of the moment. Allowing the silence to teach you. Here's something you may not expect. When you really integrate this, you'll start to welcome silences, not because you enjoy distance, but because they've become a mirror you trust. They reveal truths quickly. They show you who's consistent without you asking. They bring your own needs into focus. One of my clients, Elena, once told me, I used to hate when a man went quiet. Now I see it as free data. She meant that she no longer feared what it said about her. She paid attention to what it said about him. That's discernment, letting the wrong ones go. We can't end without acknowledging the reality. Sometimes the silence will be the sign you need to walk away. Not in anger, not in drama, but in clarity. If you've held your center, communicated your needs, and the pattern is still one of absence, then you know. The gift of this work is that you'll leave not out of resentment, but out of respect for yourself and for the truth, because the wrong man's silence will drain you. The right man's silence will be rare, and when it comes, it won't make you question your place in his life. Living in the both and, mature love lives in the paradox. You can be deeply connected and still have space between you. You can miss someone and still be fully present in your own life. You can hope for a message and still go on with your plans when it doesn't come. The both and is where emotional adulthood lives. And the women who master it, they are unforgettable, not because they play games, but because they live their lives so vividly that no one doubts they can stand on their own. Closing the loop. So here's where I leave you. The next time the quiet stretches out, I want you to hear my voice in your head saying, this is your moment. Not your moment to chase, prove, or fill. Your moment to remember who you are without the echo. Use that moment to pause, pivot, pursue, and protect. Use it to water your own garden. Use it to write a page in your new story, the one where you are the steady force, the one where you decide how you live, the one where silence is not a threat, but a teacher. Because when you live that way, you don't just keep your power. You become the kind of woman whose life is so rich, so steady, so luminous, that anyone lucky enough to be in it knows she doesn't need me to make her whole. She's already whole. I just get to add to the beauty. And that is the love worth waiting for.